Gary, along with Steve Knighty, developed one of the strongest youth middle distance groups in the country. Many of the athletes he coached early in his coaching career became Lancers and went on to represent Canada internationally in cross country. Cristiano Mauricio in 1998 at the World Juniors, Brandon Young 2001 and 2000 World Juniors, and Andy Hahn in 2001 at the World Championships, just to name a few. Not only did Gary go on to develop a strong distance program within the club scene here at Windsor, but he also went on to develop a strong high school program at St. Joe's. During his 30 years of coaching in the greater Windsor-Essex area, Gary's impact was immense. At St. Joe's, Gary's men's team won the overall men's championship in 1999 and 2001. Gary, as we previously heard, was a recipient of the Office of Leadership in Sport Award and the Peak Beach Award for service to high schools athletics. Gary began coaching with the Lancers in the fall of 1999, along with his good friend Dennis Farrell. Together they built a distance program that was the best in the country in history. Gary was part of 24 provincial, 14 national championships with the Lancers. Gary coached 20 Lancers to burst on FISU World Championship cross-country teams representing Canada.
That nothing Gary Malloy ever did was ever about Gary. It was always about somebody else. And it seemed he seldom, if ever, did anything the easy way. Which is why Gary gravitated toward teaching at-risk high school students toward the latter part of his career, when perhaps some of us in the working world might have switched to glide, knowing that retirement was straight ahead. He knew there were good in those kids, and he was determined to squeeze it out of them. And more important than that, to make those kids see it. He demonstrated that with everybody that he came in contact with, and his work with athletes here at the University of Windsor is why we are standing here today. Now, I know that Gary would deflect. Of that I have no doubt. He'd pass off all the credit to those who helped him in his work, which I know he didn't see as work at all. If anything, it was a passion and a burning desire, not necessarily to win, but just to be better. And he managed to camouflage much of that in that golly gosh, let's go for a laugh, and the occasional Guinness attitude of his. For a man who didn't have children of his own, he probably had a collection of the best dad jokes of any human on the planet. I know that Gary would thank Dennis Farrell for giving him the opportunity to coach some of the best athletes in the country. He would thank Dennis for sharing his knowledge. He would thank Dennis for sharing his time. And most of all, he would thank Dennis for his friendship. He would thank his fellow coaches in the Lancer cross country and track programs. I will name a few. I will leave others out, but you know who you are. Dave McGuffin, Don Garrod, Brett Lumley, most recently Anna Patterson, to name just four. He would thank the athletics and recreational services support staff, the people who make sure all of those behind-the-scenes responsibilities are taken care of. He would thank the uniquely excellent group of track and field and cross-country officials here in Windsor who seem to relish their roles working behind the scenes. At events like the Blue and Gold Inter-Squad track meets, the Lancers Thrill on the Hill cross-country events, right up to and including provincial and national university track and field and cross-country championships. Gary knew you were all golden and spoke highly of you, often. He, of course, would thank his athletes, and he would thank each and every one of them. Those who made a habit of standing on top of medal podiums, and they were many. But as much as he would salute and thank runners of that caliber, I know Gary would thank the members of his teams who fell short of the medal podium but continued to believe in him and trust that he had their best interests at heart. Those cross-country athletes, for example, who knew darn well that even though they put in all of the training kilometers and all the training hours, all the sweat, all the pain, they knew that they would not be competing on the weekend. It takes a special kind of person to commit to that sort of thing, and I know Gary deeply appreciated all of that. And as much as he celebrated successes, he loved to tell me stories about those who would not quit on Wednesdays when there were no winners or losers, no finish line, no clocks, none of that. And that is why the most talented of his athletes were so great come Saturday, pushed by their colleagues and by the positive attitude of their coach. Gary would thank the two people overwhelmingly most important in shaping the man that he was, his mother Betty, who is here with us today, and his father Bill, who is somewhere up there sharing dad jokes with his boy, and his many friends so supportive of him and everything he worked to accomplish. For knowing that on one of those evenings when Gary wasn't tied up with a particular athlete or a particular event, he'd find time to allow us to help him blow off a little steam and encourage him to tell his favorite story, like the one of talking his way onto the old course in St. Andrews. And he didn't even have clubs. Gary would most certainly acknowledge and congratulate the other honorees today, Jamie, RJ, Stephanie, Steve, Don, Joe, and members of the National Championship Women's Cross Country Team from 1995 and 1996. And certainly he would thank the people from the University of Windsor's Alumni Sports Hall of Fame Committee for this wonderful honor. And on a personal note, I know that Gary left an indelible mark on this institution, and many of us who knew and loved him. So, deep breath, Anthony. I and we thank you for honoring our friend, our son, our cousin, and our uncle in this most wonderful way. Thank you very much.
For me, it's my first one, but I think this is the greatest group ever. There's so many people in there that affected my life. Gary, my first high school, first coach ever in track and field. You know, Donnie, Gary introduced me to Donnie. You know, me and Lummer, you know, my mentors, they were all here and they were all a part of it. So it's emotional. I would love Gary to have been here, but I think he is with all the people he's impacted along the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's really been a bit of an emotional roller coaster the last 6 months or so since Gary's passed. There's a lot of times when you, with Gary, he was always involved, and you know, he was a go-to guy. And and right now he's not there to go to. So at times I've often found myself, and I know others have too, that you think, well, what would Gary do now? And so yeah, it's emotional, and but it's a great honor for him. When, you know, he needs to be recognized. I'm glad it's happening.